Hello and welcome. Here we are at Spohr's Garden, halfway between Falmouth and Woods Hole, and we're going to be painting this scene today with a lot of daffodils, and should be a great time. Okay, today we're working on a little bit bigger size. It's 24 inches by 32 inches, and I'm working on a luan. It's a plywood that I've coated out. We're doing a scene that I came up with for Spohr's Garden. We're going to have a person sitting in the daffodils or standing in the daffodils. I'm drawing everything with a transparent color. It's burnt sienna. And the reason I use a transparent color to draw with is because if I want to change my mind or move it here or there, it wipes off real easy. And so I can just feel free of just drawing on there quickly, and I can change my mind 1,000 times if I have to. So I'm using two hands because I found that if I'm using two hands, one good thing about that is I can put one dot directly across from the other, and I can line them up better instead of putting one dot and then try to match up where the horizontal dot is next to it. So I'm going to have her standing in a field of daffodils. I'm starting off with the head because that's kind of the main focus of the painting. And if I don't get that right, so that way, if it's not quite right, I can just keep wiping it out, putting it on until I get that somewhat in the ballpark. I'm using a flat brush. It's small. I think it's a 2. And I'm using just Kleenex to wipe my brush in between. I'll either use Kleenex, or I'll use a paper towel, or sometimes a cloth. Now I'm going to have the light coming up from the daffodils, so that's why the chin is going to be a little bit lighter than the top of her head. So a subject will either get light from the sun or bounce light, or they'll get it from the sky. So usually on the shadow side, you'll get sky reflection, and on the other side, you'll get the influence of the sunlight. So this sunlight is going to be to our left and down. And I'm just in my mind's eye trying to figure out where would the light hit if it's coming up from the bottom up and to our left. I'm going to have dark hair on her. And I'm just making up this person. It's not any particular person. And I'll put her in a sundress. Now you notice on my palette there, all these different colors. What I do is, first I go to a scene and I figure out, just like I'm composing the scene, figure out where things are going to be. I also figure out what kind of lighting effect do I want. Do I want a sunny day or a bright sun or overcast or whatever? And then I try to make up as many colors as I can before I start so I can keep moving fast so I don't have to delay the rhythm of the piece. Now, so on this particular scene, I'm going to have her in dappled light. So the light is coming through the trees and bouncing off the flowers and things. And so that's the effect I'm trying to go for. So we'll see what happens here. So I started off with orange background. I painted the board orange first because I want kind of a sunny day. And when you're painting, a lot of times a little bit of that color will come through and it kind of unifies the painting. I find that if I'm using a rag or a paper towel or whatever, I can put on big swatches of paint, which speeds it up. And instead of having to clean my brush every time I change colors, I just get rid of the Kleenex, let's say, and grab another one, and it's a fresh start. It's clean. I'm trying to do whatever I can to speed up the process so it's kind of just a natural reaction instead of thinking too hard. And then at the end, when I'm getting close, I step back and try to figure out what can I do to improve the scene. And she's going to be holding a hat. There's one color that I always put on is a gray scale. I put two dark swatches of gray, one slightly different in value, and then two light swatches of gray. And I do that with all my colors. Just you can see I've got green and blue and things that you would see in a garden. So I'm having the light hit the rim, the edges of the hat. And the good thing about oil is if I don't like something, I can just take it right off with, I use turpenoid. It's an odorless, kind of a mineral spirits. It's not turpentine, but it's a solvent. And I can fill in big swatches of color. Using the Kleenex or paper towel. Now I'm painting the distant daffodils. And what I start with is just big big things of color. And then right at the very end, I'll put a definition of a couple flowers here and there so you know what it is. But I don't go detail. The further away, the less detail. And the closer you are to whatever subject you're painting, the more detail you get. With some eyebrows there. Now, in the process of painting this head, I might move things around a little bit. Like, for example, if I feel like the chin is too big, I'll move the eyes down. I'll move things around. But I just jump in it. At first, I just jump in. That's the beauty of oil paints. You can adjust things really easy. If it was watercolor, it's much harder because when you touch the surface, the watercolor sinks into the surface, and it's makes it much harder. I feel that oil painting is the easier than acrylics, because you have time to mix a different color, change your mind before it sets up and dries. I'm going to have her kind of standing underneath a shade of a tree. And so when I go to a scene, I just get the general idea of the scene. And then I compose where I want trees to be, or certain things. But I try to get the feel of where I'm at. And I work in complementary colors. Like, for example, if I'm using a blue, then I want to use somewhere around it orange. Or if I'm using red, I try to put some green around it, or yellow with violet. Now, this particular painting, we sped up the video a little bit, so we get the whole thing done in roughly a half hour. This painting, in actual time, took 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is fast. I'm going to put a rock right next to her there, and some grass around, or stems of daffodils and greenery. So once I have the canvas completely covered with paint, then I can figure out different contrasts. If I want something to come forward, it's a big contrast of light and dark. And when it goes back to the distance, the dark and the light get closer together until it gets to a place where it's just a silhouette. I'm throwing in some tops of daffodils. And I'm finding that if I want something to pull to the background, I make it brighter in the background to pull it that direction. A lot of times, I go for a walk in the morning and just look at things, just take my regular walk. But I'm noticing how light hits on trees, how light hits on water and different things like that, and just try to remember how things work. Like I said before, the good thing about using a cloth or a paper towel or whatever is that if I want to change colors, or I can just throw away the piece that I'm using and use a new Kleenex or whatever, and it keeps the paint from getting muddy. At some point in time, you just got to go with your gut feel. You'll be able to feel when you start going the wrong direction, and you pretty soon you get a feel of that works, that doesn't work, and you get that by just doing a gazillion paintings. So what I'm really doing here is drawing with a brush or drawing with a Kleenex. And I wanted to kind of make that head a little bit smaller, so I'm bringing the hair in a little bit. So I'm restating which way the light is coming from. Now, on the side, the shadow side, the side that has less light, I get put some blue from the sky or a more green on that side, and on the side that the light's coming from, I'll put more yellows and make it lighter. Along with the little sunspots, the light that's coming through the trees, I also try to add a little bit of very subtle shadows of the limbs and of the tree or whatever is casting a shadow on the figure. I try to repeat a color. For example, there'll be a color in the foreground, and then as it goes back, I add a little more gray to it to make it less intense. That's another way of making things look like they go forward or back. Another big thing that you have to think about are edges. The edges are from one plane to the next, or if you were thinking about a box, one side of the box next to the next side of the box, sometimes that's real sharp, a real strong edge, and sometimes the edge going from the back of the box to the background is almost non-existent. And selecting the right edges, there's broken edges, there's hard edges, soft edges, and the edges can make a huge difference. I was reading a book the other day, or looking at actually it was at YouTube, and it was about Monet. And what was interesting is he had a picture, and below the picture that he painted were the different colors that he used. And what surprised me was that the colors weren't bright like they come out of the tube. They were relatively dulled down with gray. And I think he knows how to make something look brighter by putting its complement next to it. Like, for example, if you want a brighter red, you put green around it or next to it. And if you want to dull the color down, you mix red with green, and that dulls either the red down or the green down. So it's kind of interesting how muted the colors actually were. And so on my palette that I preset, tried to set up before I even start painting, after I've chosen the colors that I want, I start off with muted colors, and then I can always make them brighter by getting the paint more out of the tube instead of mixing them. And so I start off with very muted colors. And so if I want the eye to go from the foreground to the distant ground, I make the foreground a little bit duller and then the background color a little bit brighter, so your eye is pulled towards the brighter color, or vice versa. If I want the foreground to be more lit up, I put the brighter color there, and then as it goes back, it gets duller by adding some gray to it. And so that was kind of interesting. It's really good to look at artists that you like and make copies of their work so you can figure out how they did a particular technique. The two things that I've found that is really helping me is, one, to figure out what my colors are going to be before I start, whether I want a warm day, a cool day, or whatever. And the other thing is to try to memorize the scene. It doesn't have to be exactly like the scene, but if I memorize the subject or the scene, then I have less to think about, and I can get more into the painting. It's almost like playing the guitar or something. You learn a tune, and then you just play the tune, and things go much quicker. And after a little while, it's kind of a fun way to approach doing a painting. This particular painting that I'm doing now, this is just someone standing in the daffodils. It's not a particular person or anything like that. It's just a figure that's out of my imagination. And that way, you're not restricted to just what you see. You can go anywhere with your imagination, and it's kind of fun. So now I'm going back and just kind of confirming different spots that need to be stronger. Add some little highlights, and you notice how those white little flowers that I'm putting in now, they look like they're in the foreground because there's a big contrast between the white and the dull green behind them. So after a while, you learn the game of, knowing what to make stronger or weaker with the color, how to go forward and back. But the main thing over anything else is getting the right value. And you can do that with just drawing, figuring out where the different values go. Because once you got the values down there solid, that's why a lot of people, when they start a painting, they'll just do a light and dark study using whatever color they're using. Like in my case, I was using burnt sienna. But make the places that are dark, darker, and the places that are lighter, lighter. And then when you go with the color, you can put any color in a value as long as the color is the same value or just slightly lighter, because when you mix two colors together, they're always get a little bit darker, so you want to adjust for that. I can always tell, like when I get towards the end of a painting, when I'm starting to turn the corner and things aren't going as well as I'd like. So when they start turning the corner, I stop, and if I have to fix something, I wait for the next day, and I absolutely do not try to chase the painting. Like, for example, if I start off and it's the light changes so fast outside, especially close to sunset or dawn. And once you've chosen a light, go with that and don't change the whole scene because the light outside has changed. You got to lock in and do it where you're at. Okay, that's it for this week. I'll see you next week, and hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.